Happy Food Safety Friday, everybody. Woo woo. I hope you're having an awesome Friday, and we are that much closer to the weekend. We're almost there. Just keep pushing through. But before we leave for the weekend, I want to tell you about our EMP trending results. And so what I did, I made up an example of a fake packer with common sites that are found in all packing houses with fake results. So I basically picked sites that are common through all packing houses and determined whether they were positive or negative. And I'm saying that these results are from August 21 through October 21. So again, all these sites are completely made up. It's not indicative of any one packer, nor the results indicative of any packer. So with that, let's jump right into it. And so first I want to talk about what our goals were for the EMPs. So we had you make your EMPs and we've looked them over. We've given you feedback on them. So I just want to reiterate what our goal was of why we even did this in the first place. So we want to help you make your packing sheds as safe as possible for the finished product. So we basically put your packing shed under a microscope and asked you to determine what are your problem areas, what are areas you have no clue about, are you cleaning your areas properly, and kind of made you examine what's really going on in your packing shed. And this is to help you understand where in your facility the pathogens are being harbored at. What areas are in your facility are specific for, listeria growth, what conditions are right for EB growth. And so with this, the EMP, there's 3 goals we wanted to obtain. So we're going to gather all this data over months to come, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll see 3 things happen. 1, we're going to see if you're keeping up with your sanitation, if your cleaning methods are being done properly throughout the season. So a sanitation verification. 2, we're going to identify problem areas that are within the packing shed. So we know wax area is an issue. Everyone knows that. But maybe one packer has an issue with his drying room, whereas the other one has an issue with the finished product cooler. So you really get to know where in your facility your issues are at and if you're really taking care of them the way you're supposed to be. And then finally, we're going to determine the risk to your facility. How likely are you to get a lot of listeria growth or high EB rates? From this, we're going to be able to determine the root causes of the problem. So things like, do you have enough workers? Are your chemicals right? Are you using your chemicals correctly? Did you get a new piece of equipment? And we're going to identify what's really causing the problem instead of just doing temporary fixes that just get us that negative for us to move on. But then the problem just comes back either the next sampling or it comes back the next year. So, and also the EMP was going to help determine what is the appropriate testing schedule for your facility. So right now, all the sheds do have 2 samplings a month, but maybe your shed only needs 1 sampling a month. So you're getting your results back, you're seeing all this data come back, and you're seeing a lot of negatives come back. Okay. And we see that throughout the facility that you just don't have. You keep up with your sanitation, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So we don't need to test your facility as often because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and doing it very well. So that's the goal of this EMP. It's not meant to be stagnant. It's meant to be changing year to year as your facility changes, as your cleaning crew changes, as your chemicals changes. This is going to encompass all of those issues and show you what is happening in your facility. So with that, let's jump into some of the examples that I put together. This first graph is the total samples, which includes initial test and retest. And it's from August 21 through October 21. So we can see on the y-axis here, we have our number of samples. And then the x-axis, we have our months. So we can see in August, we had a total of 25 samples. 21 of them were negative, which is green. And then we had about 3 of them that were positive, which is red, indicated in the key over here. And then 1 of them was invalid, which is in gray. And we can see the same thing for September and October. So this type of graph allows us to see, okay, are we getting what month are we getting more positive results in? You know, are we getting more later in the season or are we getting more earlier in the season? So in this case, we have more earlier in the season when we're starting our cleaning. Another graph you can do is you can look at the number of retests that were needed. So this includes positive, negative, and invalid results, again, for the same time frame. Again, we have number of samples on the y-axis, but on the x-axis, we have our retests and we have our routine. So this means that all the data in this column are routine samples that were done. So about 55 of these routine samples were negative, but about 5 of them were positive, with 1 of them being invalid. These are the amount of retests that were needed from these routine samples. So again, retests are only needed if it's positive or invalid, as we all know. So that means this number came from the invalids and the positives combined. So we can see that from my quick math, we had 6 total tests that needed to be retested. So we got about a total of 8 retests that we actually did. So that means that we ended up having to retest a spot more than once, which is indicated. We can see that we had a positive retest. So we know for sure that one site needed 3 retests done in order for it to be negative. So that's an example of a retest graph. It's good because it shows you how efficient your cleaning is and if you're actually taking care of the problem. This graph is broken down by the general area and includes the initial test and retest. So again, we have number of samples, but then on the x-axis, we have it sorted by the general area. So we asked you to break down your facility by your general areas, and this is why, so that we can sort all your data into these areas for you to help break down where in your facility issues are, where issues are not present. So we can see here, we got some issues in bin filling, sorting, wax, and the wet and dump tank area. And again, we're sorting by listeria results, so gray is invalid, red is positive, green is negative. So we can see we have about 20 samples that we did in the wet and dump tank, and we're seeing we got some positives and some invalids. However, in packing, we've tested about 17 or so samples, and all of them have been negative. So this is a good indication that we don't need to be testing as much in packing because we've had 17 samples there, and none of them have came back positive. So what you can do is you can say, okay, I don't need to test as much in packing, so I can reallocate those samples to maybe a different area like sorting or bin filling to determine, okay, we know we have some kind of an issue going on here. We're not totally sure. So this is where when we said that this plan is not meant to be static, it's meant to be changing. So this is where we're saying, okay, you can move your testing resources in different areas, or let's say you have a very low positive rate. Let's say that there's no positives in bin filling, no positive in wax and sorting, no positives in wax. Okay, now then we can say you have a really low positivity rate for listeria. So that's when we can sit down and say, okay, maybe we can change your sampling routine so that you only get sampled once a month instead of twice a month. So those are just some ideas that kind of we can pull out from a graph like this. This graph is the positive and negative results for all zones broken down by general area. So this has 3 different factors in it. Again, we have number of samples on the side here and Here is our graph. So we have down here, we have our zones, zone 2, zone 3, and zone 4. Now, how to read this is everything contained within a long line like this belongs to the number or the letters on the bottom. So all these different areas are zone 2s. All these different areas here belong to zone 3s, and this area belongs to zone 4. I've only put positive and negative in this graph because it's easier to see and it's less messy. So we can see that in zone 3s, we do pretty good. But then we get to zone 2s and we see we have quite a few more positive samples. So again, this is another instance where, you may be doing a super good job of cleaning on zone 3s, but you're kind of lacking in the zone 2 area. So that's where we kind of get to determine, okay, why are we not cleaning zone 2s as well as we need to be? So with that, that was just a snapshot of what we can do with your results. Obviously, I just went through it pretty quick, so it does not take very long to go through it once you kind of get the hang of it. So this EMP program is all about your guys' packing sheds. You're in charge of your own plant. So we want to help make these tools easy for you to understand and accessible to you. So we want to personalize each trending report that we just covered with the graphs. We're going to personalize it to what you need. So a simple question you can ask yourself is, okay, do I just want a snapshot of my shed? Like we saw in the first graph where you just saw the positives and negatives per month, or do you want more detail? If you want more detail, which we would strongly encourage, if you just kind of want a snapshot, you're not going to understand what's going on in your facility. So more detail, you can focus on things like your trouble areas or areas of new concern. So when I say areas of new concern, did you get a new piece of equipment? We know that if you get a new piece of equipment, that pathogens that have been living there can get stirred up and get spread to your new equipment. Did you get a new cleaning method? Are you using new chemicals? Are you doing it right? So maybe you just started using wax stripping. You really want to know, is it working? This can help you figure that out. Then also, do you have enough workers? You got everything else right, but you're just missing the manpower to do the actual work. Some trouble areas that you can focus on. Obviously, wax is a common theme for everybody. But maybe you have issues, like I said, maybe you have issues in the finished product cooler. So we can focus on that area when we give you your reports. We can do all these graphs, we can filter by different things. So some things are zones. So we can test zone 2, 3, and 4. And then we do not test zone 1s, but Summit can do zone 1s for EB. So if you want to know your EB results, we have those and we can trend those out just like we're doing with the Listeria. We can do your general areas like I showed you. We can do specific sites. So let's say you really want to dig into where in the wax room am I having issues? Is it my footings? Is it my crossbar, flicker bars, the walls? We can kind of trend those results out for each site over the months and see what's kind of going on there. The results, if you want to just know how many positives you had, then we can do that. Or if you want to get the whole view of negatives, positives, and ballots, we can customize a graph to fit that as well. The time of year, we can see, how you're doing throughout the season, how you're doing from year to year with your sanitation verification. And we can do retests. So like I showed you in the second graph, we can tell you whether or not you're really taking care of the problem on the first time. So that can give you a big indication of, is my sanitation working? Are my workers doing their job like they're supposed to be doing? Investigation swabs. So these are swabs that, let's say you want a certain site swab, but it's not on your EMP. You just kind of want to know, is there something living there? So we can keep track of those and monitor those over time. Vector swabs. So how we would use vector swabs in our trending results is that, you're going through the season pretty good, then you get a positive. Okay. And then you get another positive from the same site. Now you have to do vectors. So we do the vectors, we get it cleaned up, but now we can monitor afterwards and see what happens, how the site behaves afterwards. Does it come back? Does it come back the next year? So that can help us determine kind of what's going on in a specific area. And then finally, pre or post sanitation. You cleaned it, you think you got it good, you can clean it all up, but you want to make sure you really got it all cleaned. So those are just some filters that we can show you in your graphs, just like I just shown you. But again, this is your EMP program. This is your facility, and we want you to design this how you would want to see it. So if you want to see something that I didn't mention, you can definitely share that with us so that we can help you really figure out what's going on in your facility and just make it the best it can be. And then just a small thing, if I had graphs in here, but if you prefer tables, we can totally do tables too. It's up to you. Again, we want this to help you guys see how your facility is working throughout the year on an environmental level, and to make sure that you're doing your sanitation properly, and that we are making sure the product is as safe as possible so that we don't end up in a bad situation. So with that, I hope that helped give you an example of what we're kind of going to do with this. Again, this is a learning process for all of us, so we will continue revamping this and trying to make it as smooth as possible for everyone and as easy as possible. So with that, thank you, and I hope you all have an awesome weekend.